So just a final session. So we've discussed, we've covered most of these points, and the only point we haven't covered so far is the SharePoint platform and our integration into SharePoint. So I'd like to ask Attila to come forward and tell us what is new and what we do in SharePoint.
Hi everyone. So in this presentation, I will talk about not just the ChemAxon platform, but how it is integrated into a different platform, namely Microsoft SharePoint. Let me start my presentation with a rough analogy, which is a beehive. And what a beehive is all about. It is collaboration and sharing information to work better together. And it is similar to a company which is using SharePoint. So this gives us a short answer what SharePoint is. But by default, SharePoint is not aware of chemistry. So it makes sense to ask, what if we put together SharePoint and ChemAxon? Because with ChemAxon platform, we can bring chemical intelligence into SharePoint. This manifests in two main areas. One is JChem for SharePoint, which is responsible for enriching SharePoint sites with chemical structures, and JChem for SharePoint Search, which is an extension to the built-in SharePoint search engine, and it allows you to search different structure representations on SharePoint content. To give a more precise answer, what is SharePoint? Microsoft typically uses a so-called feature circle that identifies 6 main areas of SharePoint's feature set. I will go through all of these 6 areas now and add to each one what ChemAxon can, how can ChemAxon extend these areas. Let's start with sites. With SharePoint, you are able to create sites within a few clicks, avoiding programming. You can edit these sites with a probably already known interface from Office. So it uses the same ribbon like Excel or Word has. But for whom can you create sites? It can be a publicly available site for your company where all your customers can get information about your products or about your company. Or this site can be just an internal site for the staff of the company, or for an even smaller group, for your team, you can create sites to share information. But if your team, or if you are working in life science industries, and you would like to share information about chemical structures, then it's essential to visualize these structures. And that's where ChemAxon comes into picture, because with JChem for SharePoint, you are able to draw and edit chemical structures and add them to any SharePoint sites. Now let's move to the next area, the communities. As I mentioned, SharePoint is for collaboration, so it's got special features that helps it. For instance, you can create calendars, create blogs, or make discussion boards, or do an internal wiki. But here, there's the same issue. If you want to work with structures, then you cannot do it. Let's say there's a synthetic chemist group in your company, and they would like to discuss possible reaction pathways, or just talk about structures. Then it's really helpful to be able drawing structures in these community features of SharePoint. Now let's move to content, which is a really important part, because in SharePoint you are able to create document libraries and upload any type of files. The most importantly, you can upload Office documents. and then edit them together with your colleagues. And this can help you to avoid the messy versions of different documents sending back and forth via email. Also, there is a special, not that special, but a nice feature in SharePoint called lists, where you can store different data like text, to your data numbers, and so on. This is basically a table, but with JChem for SharePoint, you can also store structures in them. Structures can get into the list by importing an SDF file or a JChem for Excel workbook. And once they are in place, then you can also edit them within a list. Not just the structures, but additional calculations also can be added to these lists. And once they are there, you might want to get out them. And you can also do export in MRV and SDF and JChem for Excel workbook. Since SharePoint got a fine-grained security, then you could make a list, for instance, and share it with your CRO so they can get, so you can communicate them with easily and share the structures what they need to synthesize, for instance. There's another important thing or nice thing that rows of list can be versioned. So if you make changes, then all of them will be logged, and you can reverse if you make some errors. Okay, so now at this point, we got many sites, we got communities, we got content on our SharePoint server, but how to find something in this big pile of data? And for this, there is a built-in and powerful search engine in SharePoint, and you can find what you need using it. But since you uploaded many structures using JChem for SharePoint, you might want to find also them, or just find chemical names in documents. So we created the JChem for SharePoint search to allow you to find chemical structures and names in your SharePoint content. You can draw a structure, and it will give back you the results in this way. So there is a list of documents where it was a substructure search, and you get back the list of documents where the substructure search got a hit. And also, you can get a larger preview of the hit structure on the right. Now let's have a look at what formats are supported. Of course, Office documents, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and PDF, and text files, and almost all common chemical structure format like MRV, MOL, SDF, SKC, CDX, and CDXML, and so on. But what exactly found in these documents? Here you can see the representations that are searchable by JChem for SharePoint search. So whenever in a document a chemical name appears, like caffeine, a traditional name, or the IUPAC name, the SMILES and INCHI, whenever they are mentioned in a document, it will become a hit in the JChem for SharePoint search results. Additionally, embedded structures like Marvinole, Chemdriole, and Isisole are searchable too, and JChem for Excel workbooks as well. And last but not least, all the SharePoint content you created. So the sites enriched with chemical structures will also be returned by the search. Inside the next area, it's stands for that with SharePoint you can create reports and summaries on data stored in SharePoint, and these are dynamically updated. It's not an example from our industry. It's just a summary of sales performance in the US. And the last one in the circle is the communities composites, which stands for that SharePoint is got a high level of customizability. And for instance, with SharePoint Designer, which is a desktop application, you can make lots of configuration to the SharePoint. And if you do programming like we did with JChem for SharePoint, you can make such extensions. So let's sum up the circle. There is a collaboration platform, SharePoint, and if you are working in the life science industry, then with ChemAxon platform, you can bring chemical intelligence to it. And now just go through quickly what's going to be new in the next coming release. We will have integrated the JChem search options, have a multi-fragment search which allows you to combine different structure searches at the same time. We also work to have OSRA integrated to find chemical structures in images. And which is very important, I think, is that if you have a corporate ID system at your company, then JChem for SharePoint search will be able to find or return corporate IDs as a structure hit. And finally, that ISIS and ChemDrug server books are also going to be searchable. And to go more into the future, we plan to release a document preview. It's similar to Google's site preview when you hover your mouse over a link and you get a snapshot of the page. External data sources, it's for SharePoint lists can be bound to external sources like a database table. We are going to integrate Marvin for JavaScript, prepare for SharePoint 2013, and to be able to load and save queries of JChem for SharePoint search. And now, here you can see the members of the JChem for SharePoint search team. They are sitting in the back. I highlighted Tamás Pelc because he is the PO of the product. And now, please feel free to ask if you have any questions. And thank you for your attention.
So when are you going to fix it so it doesn't bust the index? We've never been able to get the damn thing installed because it's busted. And the installer, it takes somebody a day and a half to install it.
Thanks for your question, Brock.
Which makes me insane because my IT guys want our production servers to be nice and stable. Do you want me to get louder? You need a professional, you need an installer that does a nice clean install and a nice clean uninstall. That's what your future looks like.
I admit that we have to work even more on the deployment, but you have to admit as yourself that SharePoint is not really a desktop product. So
SharePoint is hard as hell to make.
Yeah, that's right.
2 years, it's a terrible product, but I paid you for a product that worked.
Yeah, so I have to admit that the deployment-wise, we have to make some improvements, but as far as I remember, it was deployed. And
It took Solar 2 days to deploy it with people on the phone.
but we found some other examples, for example, from Germany, where they deployed, so they are IT dependent. And I have to say that SharePoint environments differ a lot.
Okay, guys.
Thank
I'll let you sort out the rest outside. If anybody wants to watch, we'll have a special session around that.